This is the story of the hunt for the most dangerous hackers on the planet. Prologue. The Bears. Once upon a time, there were 5 bears. They all lived in Russia. Different habits, different skills, different missions. But they all shared one defining trait. Their names were metaphors. Code names for elite units inside Russia's intelligence services. These units are made up of hackers, some of the most skilled and most dangerous in the world. Each bear has its own objective: to spy, to expose, to sabotage, to destroy. And they are not just a threat to computers or networks. They are a threat to Western democracies themselves. Tools of destabilization, instruments of psychological warfare, engines of political manipulation. They have already broken into the German parliament. They have read the private emails of elected officials. They threw their weight behind Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. They travel the world digitally, always working in the interest of Vladimir Putin's regime. And for years, they have played a central role in Russia's brutal war against Ukraine. This documentary reveals who these hackers are, how they operate, and how we can defend ourselves against them. This story is largely based on a German-language investigative podcast, Darknet Diaries, Demons and Miracles, produced by journalists Hakan Tanriverdi and Florian Flade. A link is in the description. Chapter 1. The Email. This story begins with a tiny detail. A small line above the letter E. And with a woman named Claudia H. back in 2015. Claudia was working in Berlin as an assistant to a member of the Bundestag, Germany's national parliament. Her office sat in a beautiful building in the heart of the city. It was May 8, 2015, a warm Friday in spring. The weekend was already within reach. Claudia was writing an email to a colleague named Renee. She typed the name and stopped. The accent over the E wouldn't appear. She tried again. Nothing. Strange. She did what everyone does. Closed Word. Opened it again. Rebooted her computer. Tried once more. Still nothing. The Bundestag has its own internal IT service hotline for problems like this. The number is 117. Claudia called and explained that something felt wrong. She suspected her computer might be infected. Maybe malware. Maybe a Trojan. The response was dismissive. The issue didn't sound serious to them. At that moment, no one realized how serious the situation actually was, because Claudia was right. There really was a Trojan on her computer. She had been hacked. And it wasn't just her machine. While Claudia was still on the phone with the hotline, hackers were already moving freely inside the Bundestag's internal systems. They were operating on behalf of Russia's military intelligence agency, the GRU. Putin's bears were running wild right through the digital heart of Germany's political system. If this happened today, Claudia might have asked an AI assistant instead, probably more helpful than that hotline. With modern AI website tools, you can build a full website in minutes. No coding, just a few steps. Choose your industry. Set your goals. Let AI generate text and images tailored to you. Pick a design, adjust it with drag and drop, and publish. With built-in AI writing tools, even multilingual content is just a click away. Fast, intuitive, effortless. Your first app free for life, including hosting and support. A free custom domain for a year. Click the link in the description to get started. 8 days earlier, on April 30th, 2015, dozens of members of parliament and their staff had received an email. It looked official, as if it had come from the United Nations. The subject line referenced Ukraine and its economic situation. This was only a year after Russia's annexation of Crimea. Fighting was already raging in eastern Ukraine. Air and missile strikes had hit Kyiv and other cities. The issue was politically explosive. If the UN sent you information about Ukraine, you opened it. Claudia did. So did many others. That single click was enough. The malware installed itself silently in the background. No pop-ups, no warnings, no alerts. From that moment on, the attackers had access. Their objective was clear: gain administrator privileges. The digital equivalent of master keys, access to everything. The power to change anything, and they succeeded. They broke into sections of the system that should have been completely unreachable. From there, they moved deeper and deeper, until they had effectively taken control of the Bundestag's IT infrastructure. This was not sloppy hacking, it was a highly sophisticated operation. Carefully planned. Precisely executed. The attackers moved laterally, jumping from computer to computer. Scanning for valuable data, documents, emails, anything useful. Eventually, they reached two machines inside a parliamentary office belonging to the Conservatives. And not just any office. Angela Merkel's. Applause. The Bundestag hack became one of the most severe cyber attacks in German history. It triggered a massive international investigation and eventually led to arrest warrants that once seemed unthinkable. And yet, inside the Bundestag itself, the attack went unnoticed for weeks. Back to that Friday afternoon, Claudia was frustrated. The first hotline call hadn't helped. So she did what most people do, she called again, hoping someone else might understand. They didn't. Angry and exhausted, Claudia shut down her computer and went home. It was Friday. The weekend had begun. On Monday morning, an IT staffer remotely logged into her machine and reinstalled Microsoft Word. Of course, it didn't fix anything. Later that day, someone came by in person. Still, no one detected the Trojan. By now, the hackers had been inside the system for at least 2 weeks, and still, almost no one suspected an attack. Meanwhile, in the United Kingdom, a cybersecurity firm was watching a suspicious foreign server 1 previously used in other cyber operations. Suddenly, that server connected directly to machines inside the Bundestag network. The firm alerted Germany's Federal Office for the Protection of the Constitution. A day later, the warning reached both the Bundestag's Classified Information Office and the Federal Office for Information Security, the BSI. Thanks to German bureaucracy doing what German bureaucracy does, the warning took 3 full days to land. Finally, someone understood the scale of what was happening. The BSI dispatched a special response team to Berlin. Their task was to comb through the log's automatic records showing what ran, what was opened, and what happened behind the scenes. They needed answers to 3 questions. Is this a major attack? Yes. What are the hackers after? Most likely data theft. And are they still inside the system? Very much so. The team acted immediately. They shut down the entire network. From the outside, it looked as if someone had yanked the power cord from the wall. Claudia watched her computer shut itself off, as if possessed. For a moment, it felt haunted. That same day, Der Spiegel broke the story. Politicians learned about the hack from the news, not from internal briefings. Chaos followed. Lawmakers were furious, work ground to a halt. No emails, no documents, no access to reports. And this wasn't a movie. You don't just kick hackers out and move on. The network was massive, tangled, and fragile. The response teams had to fight through it piece by piece, trying to stop further data theft and regain control. It took weeks to clean the system. During that time, MPs could only use limited network functions. No one knew if their emails were still being read. Sensitive notes were suddenly written by hand again. The Bundestag's IT security was overwhelmed and heavily criticized in the months that followed. When the dust finally settled, investigators turned to the perpetrators. From the very beginning, the trail led east. On Claudia's computer, they found malware known as X-Tunnel, a tool that creates a direct, continuous connection like a real tunnel allowing attackers to come and go whenever they want. Inside the code, analysts discovered links to a server associated with a group called a PT28, Advanced Persistent Threat, a label reserved for hackers who are not just skilled, but patient. Intruders who don't smash and grab, but dig in and stay sometimes for years. A PT28 is also known by another name, Fancy Bear, and Fancy Bear works for the GRU. Fancy Bear is infamous. This is where they operate, in a massive concrete complex in Moscow, known as the Aquarium, the headquarters of the GRU. No one outside really knows who they are. No names. No faces. Not even how many hackers make up the unit. But one thing is certain, they are relentless. And they will go anywhere. Even into the computer of a sitting German chancellor. Ironically, it is inside that highly sensitive office that one of the hackers makes a mistake. They managed to break into a computer in Angela Merkel's outer office, her personal machine, her inbox. That is exactly what they are after. To extract the emails, one of the hackers writes a custom program. Its sole purpose is to copy Merkel's Outlook inbox and send that data to a server they control. The program is called VSC Esche, but there is a problem. To locate the files VSC, Esche needs to follow a precise file path. And that path contains a German word with an umlaut. The program doesn't recognize it. Instead of the proper character, the code displays a corrupted symbol, a question mark followed by random letters. The program can't find the folder. For a brief moment, The entire operation stumbles over the quirks of the German language. Realizing the attack could be exposed at any second, the hackers panic. Under pressure, they rewrite the code. This time they explicitly tell the program to expect German characters, umlauts included. They run it again. This time it works. The inbox is copied and transmitted successfully. It's not Merkel's most sensitive correspondence from the Chancellery, but it is still a massive intelligence win. But the hackers make another mistake. Maybe they were rushed, maybe they were nervous, but they forget to remove one critical detail from the code. Later, investigators discover it: the name of the computer the hacker was working on. The file path reads, some stolen files. A clown-like character from Italian theater. Some people recognize the name from Bohemian Rhapsody. It's the hacker's alias, his handle. From that moment on, Scaramouche becomes a high-priority target. Germany's federal public prosecutor opens a formal investigation on suspicion of espionage. Angela Merkel later describes the hack as an act of hybrid warfare. Publicly, however, the German government remains cautious at first. No direct accusations. No naming and shaming. In total, investigators believe around 16 gigabytes of data were stolen from the Bundestag network. No one knows the exact amount. 16 gigabytes doesn't sound like much. An old USB stick, but in context, it's enormous. Especially when it's mostly emails. 16 gigabytes can contain an astonishing volume of internal communication. Is that really catastrophic, though? A little espionage, some stolen files, business as usual. Governments spy on each other all the time. But then comes the US presidential election of 2016, and Putin's bears show what they are truly capable of. The Clinton campaign neither confirms nor denies the authenticity of emails published by WikiLeaks. But the damage is done. The leaks reveal how far the hackers are willing to go, and how much chaos a few gigabytes of stolen data can unleash. Chapter 2. The Orange. In mid-2015, Donald Trump announces his candidacy for president. At first, few people take him seriously, but he is different. Unfiltered. Loud, saying things other politicians wouldn't dare. The media can't look away, and Mexico will pay for the wall. I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody, and I wouldn't lose any voters. One outrageous statement after another dominates the headlines. ISIS is honoring President Obama. He is the founder of ISIS. Public outrage, disbelief, and at the same time, massive support. By early 2016, Trump is no longer a sideshow. He is the Republican frontrunner, going head-to-head with Democrat Hillary Clinton. Half a world away, in the Kremlin, Vladimir Putin is watching closely. He dislikes Hillary Clinton intensely. Their history goes back years. In 2011, Clinton was U.S. Secretary of State when Russia held national elections. She publicly questioned the legitimacy of the vote. Mass protests erupted across Russia. Putin accused the United States of fueling those demonstrations. He never forgave Clinton for it. Politically, she had been one of his toughest critics. Years later, the European Court of Human Rights would confirm that the 2011 Russian election had indeed been manipulated. Putin clearly prefers the other candidate, the loud billionaire. Trump, for his part, has repeatedly praised Putin. He calls him strong, a leader he believes he could work with. So Putin consults his intelligence agencies and makes a decision. March 19, 2016, an email arrives in the inbox of John Podesta, Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman. It looks like a routine Google security alert. Suspicious activity. Reset your password. Podesta checks with an IT staffer at the Democratic National Committee. Unfortunately, the reply contains a fatal mistake. The staffer says the email is legit when he actually meant the opposite. One typo, enormous consequences. Podesta clicks the link, enters his credentials on a fake website. That's it, the hackers are inside. They now have access to internal campaign communications, strategy documents, and tens of thousands of emails. The attackers are part of Fancy Bear. They steal roughly 50,000 emails from Podesta alone. The technique is phishing, more precisely, spear phishing. Highly targeted bait sent to a specific person. Using the same method, Fancy Bear targets more than 300 people connected to Clinton's campaign. No one knows how many fall for it. In early April, the hackers expand their operation. They target the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the DCCCC. Using convincing emails, they steal login credentials from at least one employee. Once again, they're inside. Fancy Bear deploys two familiar tools: X-Agent, and X-Tunnel, the same malware used years earlier in Berlin. While digging through the DCC systems, they find something even more valuable: credentials that grant access to the Democratic National Committee, the heart of the party. Inside, they uncover sensitive strategy documents, including opposition research on Donald Trump. In early May, the breach is finally detected. The DNC and DCCC hire a cybersecurity firm to clean up the mess. The process drags on for months. But the truth is, the hackers should have been discovered much earlier. In a small, unremarkable office building in Moscow, another group has been quietly at work. They are known as Cozy Bear, likely operating under the SVR, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service. They have been inside Democratic Party systems since mid-2015, far longer than Fancy Bear. Strangely, the two groups probably didn't even know about each other. Different agencies, different bosses. No coordination. Cozy Bear is discreet and methodical, known for leaving almost no trace. But this time, someone is watching them. In 2014, Dutch intelligence pulls off an extraordinary hack. They gain access to security cameras inside the very building where Cozy Bear operates. They are literally watching the hackers work. That's how they realize Cozy Bear is crawling through the DNC network. The Dutch warn US intelligence. Eventually, the information reaches the FBI. By September 2015, an FBI agent calls the DNC to warn them Russian hackers are inside their systems. The warning goes nowhere. It lands with lower-level IT staff and is largely ignored. Senior leadership later claims they never knew. If anyone had taken a closer look at Cozy Bear, they likely would have found Fancy Bear as well. And if that had happened, the summer of 2016 might have looked very different, but it didn't. Back to the spring of 2016. Fancy Bear is not finished. Not even close. In June, the group launches a new website, dcleaks.com. At the same time, they invent a persona. A fake identity, a supposed Romanian hacker operating alone. He calls himself Guxifer 2.0. Guxifer starts a blog. He contacts journalists directly. He offers stolen documents. He claims responsibility for the hack. The leaks begin to drop. The DNC hack explodes across the news. It dominates television broadcasts and front pages. Internal Democratic Party communications, emails, memos, strategy notes are suddenly public. The timing is devastating. The material appears to show that the Democratic National Committee favored Hillary Clinton over Bernie Sanders during the primaries, despite public claims of neutrality. There are emails discussing debate questions, messages revealing internal tensions, references to Clinton's paid Wall Street speeches, even content that looks like bias against Catholic voters. The narrative writes itself. Donald Trump seizes the opportunity. At a rally, he delivers one of the most infamous lines of the campaign. Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing. The crowd laughs, the media erupts. At this point, Clinton is already under intense scrutiny for using a private email server. While serving as Secretary of State, the FBI confirms she deleted personal emails from that account. To many voters, it looks like she is hiding something. Trump relentlessly links that controversy to the ongoing leaks. And on the very same day as his comment, Fancy Bear sends out 76 new spear-phishing emails to Clinton's staff. The impact is enormous. Maybe the leaks are not the sole deciding factor. But they hit again and again, each time dragging Clinton back into defense mode. What began as chaos becomes something more focused, more strategic, a sustained effort that clearly benefits Donald Trump. Just over a month before Election Day, Fancy Bear hands John Podesta's emails to WikiLeaks. Then the drip begins. Week after week, WikiLeaks publishes batches of emails. Some mundane, some explosive, but all perfectly timed to dominate headlines. The constant flow creates a lasting impression. Something is rotten inside the Democratic Party. Clinton loses momentum. Her campaign is forced to react instead of attack. She spends valuable time responding to leaks rather than promoting policy. The hacks are only one part of a much larger operation. Fancy Bear is backed by a digital army. Trolls and bot networks operating out of places like this building in St. Petersburg. They flood social media with inflammatory content. Fake accounts, polarizing memes, conspiracy theories. Some go further. They organize real-world protests in American cities, both pro-Trump and anti-Trump events. The goal isn't ideology. It's division. Election night arrives. Hillary Clinton loses. Hillary Clinton loses. Donald Trump becomes president of the United States. It is nearly impossible to measure exactly how much influence the hacks and disinformation campaigns had, whether they tipped the scales or merely nudged them. But many experts, including political scientist Kathleen Hall Jamieson, agree they mattered. Russia, to some extent, successfully interfered in the 2016 US election. It is widely considered the most effective hack-and-like operation ever carried out. Steal internal data, release it strategically, amplify outrage, fan the flames. States have always spied on one another. That isn't new. But taking stolen intelligence and dumping it into the public sphere to deliberately influence an election, that is something else entirely. If hackers can steal private communications, release them at the perfect moment, and shape public perception, what does that mean for democracy? If a foreign power can manipulate the core of another nation's democratic process, that's not just hacking. That's destabilization. And it fits into a broader strategy, one designed to erode trust in democratic institutions themselves. Democracies are especially vulnerable. An authoritarian state can flood the internet with state media, bots, fake personas, and leaks, then watch as open societies tear themselves apart from within. Inside the dictatorship, nothing shakes. Dissent is crushed quickly and visibly. In the United States, the full realization comes too late. After the election, the CIA, FBI, and NSA compile their findings into a highly classified intelligence assessment. In early 2017, a redacted version is released publicly. One sentence stands out. We assess that Moscow will apply lessons learned from its campaign aimed at the US presidential election to future influence efforts worldwide. The message is chilling. This was not a one-off. This was a blueprint. The aggression and technical sophistication of the cyber operations shocked policymakers across the West. Eyes open. This is not traditional espionage. It is sabotage. In Germany, alarm bells start ringing too. A federal election is coming up in 2017, and then a new website appears, btleaks.com. The name is deliberate. BT for Bundestag, a clear echo of dcleaks.com. Soon, variations follow. btleaks.org. Other similar domains. German authorities notice the registrations and panic spreads quietly through government offices. Is Germany next? Is the American playbook about to be reused? In early May 2017, Angela Merkel travels to Russia. It is her first visit since the Bundestag hack. She meets Vladimir Putin at his summer residence in Sochi. Behind closed doors, Merkel confronts him. Putin denies everything. Russia, he says, never interferes in the internal affairs of other countries. Merkel responds firmly. I assume that German parties will conduct their election campaigns among themselves. The message is unmistakable. Stay out. In the end, the 2017 German election is not rocked by major leaks. To this day, no one knows for certain what happened to the stolen 16 gigabytes from the Bundestag hack. Not a single public leak has ever been definitively linked to that data. But maybe there didn't need to be. Maybe the information was used quietly, strategically, selectively. Sometimes the most powerful weapon is the one no one sees. Meanwhile, the hunt for Scaramouche continues. It will take years before his real identity is finally confirmed. Some of his colleagues, however, are not so lucky. Chapter 3. The Cleaning Crew. April 10, 2018. A passenger plane from Moscow touches down at Schiphol Airport in the Netherlands. Among the travelers are 4 Russian men. They look ordinary, businesslike, easy to miss. 2 of them are in their 40s, Alexei Manin and Evgeny Serebryakov. Both appear relaxed, even cheerful. Walking just behind them are 2 younger men, Alexei Morinets and Oleg Sotnikov. According to their passports, they are diplomats. A sharply dressed man from the Russian embassy meets them at arrivals and escorts them outside. But these men are not here on official diplomatic business. They are members of a specialized GRU unit trained to conduct covert operations abroad. Minin and Serebryakov handle reconnaissance. Morinets and Sotnikov are the hackers. They rent a small car and drive off. Their first stop is an electronics store, where they purchase a heavy-duty 12-volt battery and a charger. Then they check into a nearby hotel. The next day, Minin heads out alone. His destination is the OPCW, Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. The OPCW is an international watchdog tasked with investigating chemical weapons use and enforcing global conventions. At that moment, it is finishing a highly sensitive report. Just weeks earlier, former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia were found unconscious on a bench in Salisbury, England. They had been poisoned with Novichok, a nerve agent developed in the Soviet Union. The OPCW's findings support the British government's conclusions. Minin scouts the area carefully. He photographs the OPCW building. He takes pictures of the Marriott Hotel next door. 2 days later, on April 13th, the operation is scheduled to begin. What the 4 men don't know is that they have been under surveillance from the moment they entered the country. The Dutch Military Intelligence Service, the MIVD, is watching them closely. For the original version of this documentary, a senior MIVD official described the scene with visible satisfaction. He couldn't help but smile when talking about the transport, a very small rental car, 4 grown men, packed tight. How did the Dutch know to look for them? According to multiple reports, the MIVD had received intelligence that members of a PT-28 Fancy Bear would be arriving in the Netherlands. The original tip may have come from British intelligence. April 13th, the moment arrives. The 4 men drive to the Marriott Hotel and park near the OPCW compound. The rear of the car faces the building. The trunk is loaded with equipment. The battery powers a laptop through a voltage regulator. A second laptop sits in the front seat. Morinets and Serebryakov prepare the hack. The key piece of hardware is a flat-panel Wi-Fi antenna, hidden under a jacket and connected via USB. The antenna imitates the OPCW's legitimate Wi-Fi network. If a device inside the building automatically connects, believing the signal is real, the hackers can intercept credentials. With those credentials, they could access the internal network. The likely goal is clear. Either steal sensitive data from the OPCW or undermine its credibility by leaking or manipulating the findings. But they never get the chance. Suddenly, 2 unmarked vehicles roll silently into the parking lot. Then everything happens fast. Doors open. Commands are shouted. The 4 men are pulled from the car and restrained. One of them tries to destroy his phone, stomping on it repeatedly. It doesn't work. The search begins. Inside the vehicle, authorities find a plastic bag full of trash from the hotel room. Beer cans, receipts, a half-hearted attempt to erase their trail. They also find large sums of cash, 20,000 euros, $20,000, crisp bills. Most damning of all is a taxi receipt in Morinet's bag. It documents a ride from the GRU headquarters to the Moscow airport on the day they left Russia. The digital evidence is even worse. One phone was activated just 1 day before the trip. Its first signal connects to a cell tower near the GRU compound. The laptops reveal a wider pattern of operations. Serebryakov had traveled to Lausanne in 2016, likely targeting the World Anti-Doping Agency. In December 2017, he was in Kuala Lumpur, allegedly attempting to hack Malaysian police systems. Those systems were investigating the downing of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17. That passenger plane was shot down over eastern Ukraine by a Russian-made missile. And the operation wasn't supposed to end in The Hague. The men had onward tickets to Switzerland, likely heading for the spy's laboratory, another facility analyzing the Novichok samples. Sometimes hacking requires physical proximity. Phishing emails aren't always enough. You need to see the networks. Understand the security. Observe who comes and goes. German journalists give this unit a nickname: the cleaning crew. They arrive after something explosive has happened. Their job is to clean up, steal evidence, shape the narrative, spin the story. For the MIVD, the arrest is a major victory. And unusually, they decide to make it public. 5 months later, they hold a press conference. The evidence is laid out in detail. Photos, hardware, receipts. The 4 men are eventually released and sent back to Russia, likely for diplomatic reasons. Their mistakes seem almost amateurish. Why keep a taxi receipt? Because these are not mythical figures in hoodies. They are state employees, civil servants, hackers with schedules, paperwork, and bad coffee. They just happen to work for an authoritarian regime that weaponizes code. Russia denies everything. The men were supposedly just tourists, on a routine trip. Of course, nothing says tourism like a flat panel antenna in the trunk. This strange parking lot arrest proves something important. Putin's bears can be stopped. Germany manages to fend them off in later attempts. A conservative-linked NGO is targeted, but the attack fails. France successfully defends Emmanuel Macron's 2017 campaign against a similar operation. And in the United States, the response finally arrives, loud and unmistakable. In February 2018, the U.S. Department of Justice indicts 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies for interfering in the American political system. Shortly after, another indictment follows. This one focuses directly on Fancy Bear. The FBI lays out the evidence in detail, the tools used, the infrastructure, the individual operatives. Names are listed. All Russian citizens. According to investigators, they work for Russian intelligence. The hackers remain safe in Russia. No arrests are made, but a line has been drawn. Much of the world is now officially off limits to them. And one name immediately stands out to German investigators. A hacker believed to use the alias Scaramouche. The same alias found inside the VSC.exe code. The alias Scaramouche is no longer just a clue. Investigators believe it belongs to a real person, a GRU officer, a hacker who left fingerprints inside Angela Merkel's computer system. His name is Dmitry Badin. German investigators begin piecing together his profile. They uncover photographs. A young man with a soft face and dark blonde hair, worn shoulder length in later years. He is from Kursk, married, reportedly has a daughter. He lives in a town south of Moscow. According to forensic data, he listens to music while he works. Russian rock, techno, sometimes football matches play in the background as he hacks. He is a fan of Cristiano Ronaldo. In many ways, he seems ordinary. But he is not. He is a government hacker. An officer serving a regime that targets Western democracies as enemies. In May 2020, the German federal public prosecutor files formal charges against Badin for espionage. He becomes one of the few GRU hackers ever named publicly by Germany. It doesn't change much on the ground. Badin remains in Russia, untouchable. 2 years earlier, in 2018, Vladimir Putin sat down with NBC News for a high-profile interview. He was confronted directly with the allegations. 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies had been indicted by U.S. Special Counsel Robert Mueller for interfering in the American election. The interviewer presses him. Why would Russia allow such an attack? Did the Russian authorities give permission? Is this acceptable? Putin's response is cold, dismissive. I don't care. I couldn't care less. Putin's bears are never captured. Their networks are not dismantled. Their operations do not stop. This is not a story with a clean ending, quite the opposite. Chapter 4. The Satellite. February 24, 2022. A bitterly cold night in Moscow. The day has barely begun. Music. A quiet man leaves his apartment earlier than usual. He rides the metro, blending into the morning crowd. At Polyanka station, he steps off. From there, it is a short walk. He lights a cigarette. He looks tense. He works for the GRU, inside the aquarium. He is part of Unit 74,455, known abroad as Sandworm. Or Voodoo Bear. At his desk, he pulls out a chair and logs in. It is time. Music. He and his colleagues have spent months preparing, testing, rehearsing. Now it comes down to a handful of final commands. A few clicks. Meanwhile, in Austin, Texas, it is still February 23rd. A senior executive at Viasat, a satellite internet provider, is settling into his evening. Viasat's technology is known for reliability, especially in remote regions. Then the alerts begin. Automated warnings light up his screen. They are coming from Ukraine. 2 of Viasat's ground stations are under attack. Flooded with malicious data packets. Overwhelmed. Satellite internet does not actually originate in space. It flows through ground stations. If those stations fail, connectivity disappears. And now they are failing. The Sandworm operator in Moscow isn't finished. Some cyberattacks can be mitigated. This one escalates. Internet providers typically maintain remote access to customer modems. That's how updates are deployed. That access should be locked down. In Viasat's case, it wasn't. Sandworm had infiltrated the system months earlier, quietly, patiently. Now they send a command to thousands of modems simultaneously. The devices download malicious code that wipes stored login credentials. Without those credentials, the modems cannot authenticate. They cannot connect. They go dark. The effect is immediate. The executive stares at the screen. 30,000 modems across Europe are now useless. In Germany, 5,800 wind turbines suddenly lose their connection. In a small village in Sweden, the internet vanishes overnight. And in Ukraine, Viasat's largest customer is the military. Across army installations, tension spikes. Communication links fail. Reports flood in. At the same time, Russian troops cross the border. Armored columns roll forward. Missiles streak across the sky. The invasion has begun. Ukraine is attacked from multiple directions. Orders are shouted. Alarms sound. And a terrifying question spreads through command centers. What if the communications collapse? What if dashboards go dark? Surveillance feeds disappear? The Viasat attack is a perfectly timed cyber strike. A digital opening salvo synchronized with the physical invasion. But for Ukraine, cyber warfare is not new. Russia has been probing and attacking Ukrainian networks for years. Since at least 2014, after the annexation of Crimea. That year, Russian hackers tried to interfere in Ukraine's elections. In 2015 and 2016, sandworms successfully knocked out parts of Ukraine's power grid. Entire regions went dark for hours. In 2022, they tried again. This time they failed. Russia often tests cyber tactics in Ukraine before deploying them elsewhere. Election interference. Infrastructure sabotage. Disinformation. That is why Ukraine is sometimes described as Russia's cyber battlefield. The war has now raged for years. And all of Putin's bears are involved. They attack government systems, critical infrastructure, major corporations. They spy. They leak. They manipulate. But Ukraine is fighting back. Not just with weapons, but with code. Western cybersecurity firms step in. Intelligence sharing improves. Defenses harden. Ukraine does not stand alone in cyberspace anymore. The alias Scaramouche is no longer just a clue. Investigators believe it belongs to a real person, a GRU officer, a hacker who left fingerprints inside Angela Merkel's computer system. His name is Dmitry Badin. German investigators begin piecing together his profile. They uncover photographs. A young man with a soft face and dark blonde hair, worn shoulder length in later years. He is from Kursk, married, reportedly has a daughter. He lives in a town south of Moscow. According to forensic data, he listens to music while he works. Russian rock, techno, sometimes football matches play in the background as he hacks. He is a fan of Cristiano Ronaldo. In many ways, he seems ordinary. But he is not. He is a government hacker. An officer serving a regime that targets Western democracies as enemies. In May 2020, the German federal public prosecutor files formal charges against Badin for espionage. He becomes one of the few GRU hackers ever named publicly by Germany. It doesn't change much on the ground. Badin remains in Russia, untouchable. 2 years earlier, in 2018, Vladimir Putin sat down with NBC News for a high-profile interview. He was confronted directly with the allegations. 13 Russian nationals and 3 Russian companies had been indicted by U.S. Special Counsel Robert Mueller for interfering in the American election. The interviewer presses him. Why would Russia allow such an attack? Did the Russian authorities give permission? Is this acceptable? Putin's response is cold, dismissive. I don't care. I couldn't care less. Putin's bears are never captured. Their networks are not dismantled. Their operations do not stop. This is not a story with a clean ending, quite the opposite. Chapter 4. The Satellite. February 24, 2022. A bitterly cold night in Moscow. The day has barely begun. Music. A quiet man leaves his apartment earlier than usual. He rides the metro, blending into the morning crowd. At Polyanka station, he steps off. From there, it is a short walk. He lights a cigarette. He looks tense. He works for the GRU, inside the aquarium. He is part of Unit 74,455, known abroad as Sandworm. Or Voodoo Bear. At his desk, he pulls out a chair and logs in. It is time. Music. He and his colleagues have spent months preparing, testing, rehearsing. Now it comes down to a handful of final commands. A few clicks. Meanwhile, in Austin, Texas, it is still February 23rd. A senior executive at Viasat, a satellite internet provider, is settling into his evening. Viasat's technology is known for reliability, especially in remote regions. Then the alerts begin. Automated warnings light up his screen. They are coming from Ukraine. 2 of Viasat's ground stations are under attack. Flooded with malicious data packets. Overwhelmed. Satellite internet does not actually originate in space. It flows through ground stations. If those stations fail, connectivity disappears. And now they are failing. The sandworm operator in Moscow isn't finished. Some cyberattacks can be mitigated. This one escalates. Internet providers typically maintain remote access to customer modems. That's how updates are deployed. That access should be locked down. In Viasat's case, it wasn't. Sandworm had infiltrated the system months earlier, quietly, patiently. Now they send a command to thousands of modems simultaneously. The devices download malicious code that wipes stored login credentials. Without those credentials, the modems cannot authenticate. They cannot connect. They go dark. The effect is immediate. The executive stares at the screen. 30,000 modems across Europe are now useless. In Germany, 5,800 wind turbines suddenly lose their connection. In a small village in Sweden, the internet vanishes overnight. And in Ukraine, Viasat's largest customer is the military. Across army installations, tension spikes. Communication links fail. Reports flood in. At the same time, Russian troops cross the border. Armored columns roll forward. Missiles streak across the sky. The invasion has begun. Ukraine is attacked from multiple directions. Orders are shouted. Alarms sound. And a terrifying question spreads through command centers. What if the communications collapse? What if dashboards go dark? Surveillance feeds disappear? The Viasat attack is a perfectly timed cyber strike. A digital opening salvo synchronized with the physical invasion. But for Ukraine, cyber warfare is not new. Russia has been probing and attacking Ukrainian networks for years. Since at least 2014, after the annexation of Crimea. That year, Russian hackers tried to interfere in Ukraine's elections. In 2015 and 2016, sandworms successfully knocked out parts of Ukraine's power grid. Entire regions went dark for hours. In 2022, they tried again. This time they failed. Russia often tests cyber tactics in Ukraine before deploying them elsewhere. Election interference. Infrastructure sabotage. Disinformation. That is why Ukraine is sometimes described as Russia's cyber battlefield. The war has now raged for years. And all of Putin's bears are involved. They attack government systems, critical infrastructure, major corporations. They spy. They leak. They manipulate. But Ukraine is fighting back. Not just with weapons, but with code. Western cybersecurity firms step in. Intelligence sharing improves. Defenses harden. Ukraine does not stand alone in cyberspace anymore. Epilogue. Trains, Putin's bears are still out there. As dangerous as ever. Hakan Tonreverdi is one of the investigative journalists consulted for this documentary. Not long ago, a colleague of his received a mysterious package. A leak. Inside were internal documents from a Russian company called NTC Vulcan. NTC Vulcan supplies Russia's intelligence services and military with cyber weapons. The documents are detailed, technical, and deeply unsettling. They show how Russia plans cyber operations in extreme detail. Among other things, the documents outline what to do after a territory is conquered, how to control it, how to reshape it, how to break resistance and enforce compliance. They also reveal experiments targeting foreign critical infrastructure, power grids, communications, transportation. One scenario stands out. Trains. The documents explore whether it is possible to slow down rail systems remotely. Disrupt signaling, cause delays. And if you can slow a train down, you can also speed it up. The implications are obvious. Cyber operations are no longer limited to data theft or influence campaigns. They are moving into the physical world, into systems people depend on every day. Transportation, energy, water. The boundaries are dissolving. One thing is certain. We have not heard the last of Putin's bears. Not even close. In the years ahead, the challenge will only grow. The tools will become more advanced. The attacks more subtle, the consequences more severe. Democracies will have to adapt. They will need to learn how to detect bait, how to recognize traps, how to harden systems that were never designed for hostile digital warfare. Because once the bears are inside, the damage rarely stays contained. Emails turn into headlines. Headlines turn into outrage. Outrage turns into division. And division is exactly the point. The story of the bears is not just a story about hackers. It is a story about power, influence, and the vulnerability of open societies. It is about how invisible lines of code can produce very real consequences. Elections swayed. Infrastructure disrupted. Trust eroded. The bears do not need to roar. They only need access. And once they have it, they are patient, persistent, relentless. The hunt continues.